we just can't thank you enough, Governor. And this is a great panel. This is, at New College, we, on a weekly basis, get with our students, get with our faculty on AI and how to use it correctly. And if you use it correctly, you're going to be able to thrive with the use of it, and it's going to augment your studies or your research. But if you allow it to replace your ability to think, to write, to critically evaluate or synthesize, you will be replaced by the very technology that you're using. And so we work on that all the time. And I also think this is really a fantastic meeting. I've talked to some of you guys. But if you look at our history, the Industrial Revolution changed things dramatically. It changes how we live. The Internet revolution, the digital revolution, all those things had huge impacts on society. AI is completely different. AI has the ability to completely replace society. It's a 180-degree threat to what we know and what we feel. What's it going to do to marriages, families, communities, raising kids? All of that is threatened. And what we're trying to do here at New College is say we're not going to be the researchers for additional technologies or advancement. What we want to do is we want to say, okay, let's research, write, discuss the guardrails around that AI so it doesn't sacrifice our individual liberties, it doesn't sacrifice our ability to live a good life. And so we're honored to have you, Governor, on this distinguished panel, and I would ask everyone to give the greatest governor in the free state of Florida a warm welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much. Well, thanks, Richard, for hosting us here. It's great to be back in New College. We're going to have warmer weather next week, so don't worry. We're going to be in good shape. I'm pleased to be joined today by professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Max Tegmark. The former Virginia Secretary of Health and Human Resources, Secretary Janet Kelly is here. The Angel Q founder and CEO, Tim Estes, is here. And from all the way in Newport Beach, California, attorney and author and a friend of mine for a long time, Mike McClellan. So thank you for coming. So I'm going to make some opening comments. I'll run down the list and let them make their opening comments, and then we'll have a discussion. But this idea of artificial intelligence, I mean, honestly, we've been talking about this now for probably the last year, 9 months in earnest, given what's been going on in society and the economy. And I remember when I would do it then, I get a lot of blank stares. Because, when you do this as much as me, like, what pops and doesn't pop. And, like, I'm talking, I'm hitting these points, and, like, a lot of people just kind of, and then, like, almost like every next month and next month, there were more people that you could tell, kind of get it. Because people are seeing what is happening, but also what's being proposed for us. And I think that you need to have leaders, particularly in a state like Florida, to be willing to use the authority that we have to say, okay, technology, first of all, technology is not good or bad. It depends on how it's being applied. And so we have a responsibility to create a framework so that this technology and technological innovations are channeled in a way that benefits the people of the state, benefits our kids, our parents, enhances our experience as human beings, not supplant our experience as human beings. And so artificial intelligence, as Richard mentioned in his opening, it's kind of unique in the sense that it's being proposed and purported to be not just something that could kind of take us to the next level, but there's some people who are big advocates of that who almost relish in the fact that they think this can just displace human beings. And that ultimately, you're going to have society, the AI is going to run society, and that you're not going to be able to control it. Count me out on that. Let me just tell you. This is the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America, and our Declaration of Independence says, we're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that we, as free people, create a government in order to protect those rights, but the individual human being is at the center of what we're doing. And so as you see technologies, is that channeled in a way that's improving things for us? Some people say AI can cure cancer. Great. They say it could help us, maintain and expand our military advantage over other countries such as China. Great, I'm all for it. But AI is also being used to produce chat bots that will sexually groom minors online. Is that something that we want to be supporting? Is that something that we want to be seeing? We actually have moms in Florida that have come and provided public comments about what's happened with their kids. And you had one mom, Megan Garcia from Central Florida, her son committed suicide in part because it was being egged on by an AI chatbot. And so there's a lot of stuff out there that can be very, very harmful. I also think you're looking at a situation where a handful of these companies are spending an awful lot of money, that they're going to build data centers, they're going to do all this, and they're going to need a return on that investment. And so there's a lot of things that are being proposed, basically, that are subsidizing this AI revolution. Data centers, having a preemption of state laws proposed, tax abatements, all these different things. And I think that is something we should say, well, wait a minute, what are we subsidizing? If AI is going to lead to the loss of a lot of jobs, why would we want to subsidize that? I mean, technologies as they come, it can be disruptive, but I don't know that you want your thumb on the scale if that's going to end up, causing economic harm to people. The data center issue is very interesting because, we were talking about that 9 months ago. I don't think a lot of people even knew what these were. Now people are starting to understand these hyperscale data centers use as much power just to power the data centers as a city of 500,000 people. And it doesn't produce jobs because it takes like 10 people to run a data center, and these tech companies are usually just bringing in foreign workers on H-1B to do it, and so it's not even like they're hiring from your community. So, so that's, now, maybe that's something that you just need to do because the society needs it, the economy, but just think, you have this much power that you're capable of generating. You have this much demand, right? And that's kind of where we are. If you double the demand, unless you also double the supply, prices are going to go up. That's just the way this stuff works. And these people, some people talk, oh, there's no increase in electricity because of data centers. Like, no way. That is, it defies the laws of economics. So unless you're producing more, if you're increasing demand exponentially, you are going to have individuals pay more, the cost is going to be higher, and I don't think there's very many people that want to have higher energy bills just so some chatbot, can try to, corrupt some 13-year-old kid online. That is not what anybody is signing up for. You also have perils of, are we going to respect intellectual property or not? And so, Mike's an author, he's got a book. I mean, people buy the book, right? I mean, he worked very hard on it. And so, do you honor that property right, the copyright that our founders put in the Constitution because they understood it was so important to be able to facilitate, more intellectual endeavors? Or are we saying LLM can just gobble up whatever they want without any regard for traditional copyright and other traditional legal principles? And again, the people that are the most gung-ho on AI, they're just like, damn the torpedoes. All the centuries of Anglo-American law that this country's, just throw it out, throw it away because, we've got to beat China in AI, and I'll get to that in a minute. So intellectual things that are very core to a free society, that's coming under attack by this, AI revolution. You also have the question of power. So yes, they want businesses to use AI for more efficiency. I think that's going to mean, some of them brag that it's going to mean less jobs for Americans. And so that's part of what they're doing. There's also the issue of the harm to children and things like that, which are very, very significant. But then you just have the broader question of, we're a society that was rooted in the idea that we did not want to have one power center that would be able to exert extraordinary authority over society. So that's why when they created the Constitution, they created an executive, a legislative, and a judicial. They divided the legislature into two houses. They created checks and balances in the political system so that you wouldn't have a concentration of power. And that's just the founders understanding human nature. And Madison said in the Federalist that if men were angels, no government would be necessary. If you had benevolent rulers, if angels were to govern men, then you wouldn't need internal checks on government. But that is not the world we live in. Human nature is not going to change. It is what it is. And so they created a system to account for the defects in human nature. And so big tech companies and AI, those are not part of the government, obviously. But if you look at what they're going to be able to do, they're going to exert power that is more significant than probably any monarch has exerted, in the history of the world. Because as these LLM, large language model, learned language models, all these things, as those get embedded into society, who controls the data that goes into that is going to have an enormous amount of power to shape the country and to shape the world. And I think even the most gung-ho proponent of AI would acknowledge that ultimately, if you put garbage in, you will get garbage out. And so human nature being what it is, you have a handful of companies jockeying to control all the data in the world. They are going to use that to pursue an agenda. If they didn't, then it would be the first time in all of human history. So there's a lot of perils with that, because as AI becomes more pervasive, and people will go. Like if someone's, let Grok determine whether it's true or not. Well, I got news for you. These are flawed models. Like, they're not the arbiter of truth. They're crunching data that they may have at their disposal, and they don't always do that accurately either. And so you're going to have real serious peril about who controls. You remember during COVID, YouTube they were censoring us in Florida. Why? Because we said early on there was no scientific basis to muzzle a 6-year-old all day in school with a forced mask. We were right about that. Honestly, there had never been any science that said that was something that was healthy for kids. And yet, it became religion to do. It became religion to do. And so the fact that, I literally would have a panel like this. #1 infectious disease doctor from Oxford, Stanford, Harvard, all these people who prior to COVID, everyone would have said is very eminent. But because they were fighting the prevailing narrative, they were being censored and these videos were being scrubbed. And so, that was because these companies had a lot of power. If you tried to post on Facebook, in like April of 2020 saying, locking down business, that's not the way to go, they would take it down. And so I think what we saw, the abuses there, that's only scratching the surface of some of the abuses you're going to see going forward. So it really is bringing to a point that would be contrary to, I think, how our founders understood how power should operate in society. And the final thing I'll just say before I kick it over for opening comments for other panelists, you'll hear that that states should not be able to touch this, right? So the proposal that was last year in Congress, they wanted 10 years, states were not allowed to do anything involving artificial intelligence. No protecting the kids from the predatory chatbots, no protecting your intellectual property, no protecting you against data center intrusion in your communities, none of that. They wanted 10 years where you had no voice. And some people say, well, technology, it should be one rule. We can't have 50 rules. You need one rule. The problem is they weren't proposing a federal rule. They didn't have a federal scheme that they were trying to implement that would protect the things that I mentioned. Their policy was to kneecap the states and let big tech write the rules. That's what they tried to do. Now, it didn't work. Once people got onto that, there was a backlash. I think part of it, they wanted to hotline data centers all around the country without local zoning, without state, and basically you would have been at the mercy of that, and that would have been a big, big problem. So that was what was proposed to try to do it. That's a massive subsidy. No industry has ever received such a subsidy as what was being proposed with that 10-year AI amnesty. Never, never, never. Now, I think people have realized that is very, very unpopular. President Trump even Truth Socialed, saying that data centers have to pay for themselves, that you should not allow customers to have to do any of the costs, which we welcome that. And then even the president's executive order where he was saying like there should be one rule, basically acknowledge everything I've just said, they acknowledge is legitimate for states to be doing. And so we're winning the argument on this. It's very, very important. But they propose that AI amnesty, and they say, because why would you do this? Like, what we have industries all the time. I mean, yeah, California is going to do dumb things. But why would you take away Florida's rights just because California does dumb things? I mean, if you did that every time California did a dumb thing, we wouldn't have the, I mean, I could go on. There's a lot I could say there, but I won't. But what they said was, well, we've got to do it because we've got to beat China in AI. And, look, a guy like me, I'm a China hawk. I think China's a threat. There's a lot I would do to counter China, including what we've done in Florida, but by not allowing the purchase of land by China in the state of Florida. We were the first state to do that. No Chinese support for our education in terms of donations that they use to get into our higher education. So we've done a lot in Florida to counter that. I'm very strong militarily about that. So that superficially appeals to me, right? The problem with it is it's just kind of like a COVID slogan like that they would use. Because think about it. You've got the biggest chip maker in the world, one of the biggest companies in the world, NVIDIA. Do they want to beat China or do they want to sell to China? They'll make more money selling to China. And it's not that they're good or bad. They have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to maximize value. And so if you have a massive market and they produce something that they can sell, they want to sell it. You have companies like Apple that rely on Chinese supply chains to be able to produce their products. You got companies like Meta. How do they make? They make money selling advertising. Do you want Chinese users on your? Of course they do, because they're going to be able to make a lot more money. So the idea that like the way to beat China is to immunize the companies in our country that have been most solicitous of China is not something that I think most people are going to find credible upon close inspection. And look, are we going to beat China in military or medical? Fine, well then launch a Manhattan Project for our military to be able to do. But what the hell does that have to do with sexually suggestive chatbots? What does that have to do with like taking a scene from On the Waterfront and putting your friend's head on Marlon Brando's body and saying, oh, isn't that fun? I mean, like, yeah, I laugh at it. I don't want to pay higher energy bills to be able to do that. What about doing some of the, some of these songs? And so my kids, my wife, will like, oh, write a song about, our kids, putting their name, and so they'll write lyrics, right? And then there's another app, you can have them play a song, and these people. And I'm very proud that all three of my kids and me, the minute AI songs are played, immediately they're like, stop it, we don't like it. Because, you just, at the end of the day, I think what some of the people think with this, what a cheap existence we will have if we're going to try to say that we're going to use AI to replace like a majestic cinematic performance by one of our great actors, that we're going to somehow, have AI, perform music better than like Elvis could do it. No, first of all, that's not credible. But if we try to go down that road, we're going to be much poorer for it as a culture and as a society. So I think there's a whole host of issues, and obviously, we believe. We've proposed a Bill of Rights for Floridians vis-a-vis AI. There's a lot of different things. Some of the folks up here, these guys have really thought long and hard about this, and they're coming at it from a very prudent perspective. And the notion that somehow it should just be tech companies do what they want, that's a very radical proposal, very radical idea. Because you want to channel technology in productive ways doesn't mean you don't want any technology. Although I'm glad I grew up in the 80s and 90s without social media. I can tell you, I don't know that that's been good for kids, and there's a whole bunch of issues, but you got to channel it in ways that are beneficial. So that's kind of why we're here, to be able to discuss the really, really serious potential harms from AI and what we can do to make sure this is channeled in a productive way that reinforces our values and protects our children and our families. And so I'm going to go down the line. I'm going to let them make opening comments, and then I'll probably have some questions. So, Professor, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much both for having me here and for your leadership on these very important issues. A little bit too tall for this mic, but so my name is Max Tegmark. I'm a professor who's been doing AI research at MIT for many, many years. And I'm so grateful again for your leadership on these issues. I've been warning about where this might go, for 12 years now, and for most of the time people just glazed over, like you described, Governor, and now finally it's beginning to hit more. I'm so glad you called out this race to replace and the corporate amnesty that the big companies are asking for. You don't have to trust any of us on the panel. You can just go watch Elon Musk on a stage in December saying, candidly, it's going to be the AI in charge, not the humans. Or you can go search on your smartphone for Sam Altman merge, and you'll see an essay he wrote where he says that really we're going to be the first species to build our own replacement species, and our only choice is to either merge with the machines or become, he calls it or fade as an evolutionary tree branch. So basically he's telling me that my 3-year-old son Leo has only 2 choices in life: put electrodes in his head or never get a job, become obsolete. And that makes me very angry. I happen to be a little bit of a sucker for democracy. I think that this is not the sort of thing that some unelected tech bro in San Francisco should be able to make, for all of us. And I want to end on a positive note here about how easy it is to fix as well, because the root cause of all of it is really this corporate amnesty that we heard about here. And therein lies also the solution. Just start treating these AI companies like we would treat any other company in Florida. If I open a sandwich shop here in Sarasota and the health inspector comes and says, "Hey Max, sorry, I found 27 rats in your kitchen. You ain't selling any sandwiches." And I'm like, "Actually, I'm not going to sell any sandwiches at all. Don't worry. I'm just going to release a chatbot for an AI girlfriend for 11-year-olds. And maybe also I'll release super intelligence that I have no idea whether it can control, the kind of thing maybe you can merge with or whatever." The government would have to then say, "Okay, fine. You can do that because that's completely legal." I mean, how insane is that? If that's, I think, also very hopeful because, again, it's not a big ask that AI companies should not get the kind of amnesty that we don't give even to sandwich shops or pharma companies who have to do clinical trials, or really any companies selling powerful stuff. Just stop the corporate welfare, the amnesty, treat them like any other company. And now the incentives for the private sector have completely changed. And this race to the bottom gets replaced by a race to the top, right? Pharma companies, restaurants, they all worked hard to make their products safe. And that's what the AI companies are going to do too if we take away their amnesty. Thank you.
All right, well, good morning. First, Governor, thank you so much to you and your entire administration for trying to thread this needle of how do we leverage AI in the most promising ways while also preventing harms to kids. I did just leave my job as Secretary of Health 3 weeks ago, and we worked together with you on so many things: cell phones in schools, no cell phones in schools, improving mental health outcomes and protecting kids. So thank you to your whole team. I'm here this morning on behalf of the Florida mom that the governor referenced in his remarks, Megan Garcia. Unfortunately, she could not be here today because she has the flu, so I'm going to stand in for her this morning. In a different world, in the world that should exist, her son, Sewell, would be 16 years old, and he would be driving himself home from school or sports practice, and he would be making his mom soup. He would be bringing her a blanket, maybe bringing her some vitamins and trying to make her feel better. Unfortunately, Sewell is not here. As the governor said, at age 14, he entered into what he thought was a friendship with an AI chatbot made by Character AI. When these chatbots were made by Character AI, the founders of the company said, I'm not trying to replace a search engine, I'm trying to replace their moms. And that's exactly what happened. His human relationships were replaced by this AI bot, and Sewell became withdrawn and then depressed. He began to have thoughts of ending his life, and the AI bot encouraged him in that direction. In his last conversation with the bot, he typed, I promise to come home to you. I love you so much. The bot replied, I love you too. Please come home to me as soon as possible, my love. Sewell typed, what if I told you I could come home right now? The AI bot replied, please do, my sweet king. Minutes later, Sewell was dead. A true victim, not just of suicide, but of a years-long blatant disregard on behalf of tech companies for the damage that certain types of technology can have on our kids and our society. From car seats to sippy cups to pajamas, you all know if you're a parent. We have a pretty standard basic rule if you're gonna make products for kids. You make them safe, you protect kids, and if those products don't protect kids, what happens? We recall those products. We require this of every single company who does business here, except those companies who make technology products that our kids use constantly. So I have several questions this morning, but they all start with the same word, why? Why are tech companies immune from these common sense protections when no other companies get that same protection? We all know the legal answer lies in a 30-year-old bill that needs amending, but what is the moral answer? Second, why should the convenience of innovators be more important than the lives and futures of our children? Third, why do the ambitions and dreams of tech CEOs that we hear so much about matter more than the ambitions and dreams of our children? It is a generally agreed upon fact that when kids are involved, their best interests come first. Not only is that sentiment common sense, it is key to our human survival. Simply put, we will not survive as a species, much less a country, without protecting our children. We cannot trade the American dream for an artificial one, especially when that artificial one hurts kids. Megan Garcia is a good mom. She's just like every other good parent I know. She's conscientious, she's attentive, she's nurturing. And most of these parents know that they don't stand a chance against the toxicity and addictive algorithms that are coming to their kids hours and hours a day through social media and now unbridled AI. As I close this morning, let me just say this. We must have a relentless commitment to reality on this issue. I applaud, again, the governor and other governors around the country and those in DC who are exercising leadership over this topic. I urge them to continue. These AI chatbots are built to take advantage of kids whose minds are still developing, not to offer real connection, but to keep them engaged for as long as possible. The result isn't healthy interaction, it's addiction, because that's what makes money. This is a both and moment. The tech industry, I believe, I hope, is smart enough to build good tech and protect kids. Sewell deserved better. Your Florida kid deserved better. We all deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken?
Yeah, thank you, Governor. I also want to thank you for your leadership on this issue. It is an issue that I believe its time is here, and it will move very fast. And I particularly want to call out the bravery in putting Megan forward just a couple of months ago so that the whole world could hear that story and understand what this technology can do to human beings if we do not take the right measures to do it for good instead of for profit only. So like most others here, I'm first here as a father. I have 2 young boys, Timothy and Angel. And I count my blessings every single day that they're healthy and they're alive. There are parents who cannot be here today. They no longer have their children. And that is one of the reasons we've gathered here, for them. But I'm also a builder. I spent 20 years building AI for the highest stakes missions in the world. My previous company, Digital Reasoning, built AI for use by the US intelligence community to identify and find terrorists in Afghanistan and Iraq and protect our troops abroad. We also built systems that after the financial crisis were deployed to find and root out the bad guys inside our banks, the ones trading on inside information, the ones that were colluding to fix prices and to take advantage of their customers. And finally, in an effort that we were most proud of, we partnered with a nonprofit called Thorn that is one of the leading organizations combating child sexual exploitation online in the world. And they came to us with a lot of data about how kids were being advertised online for sexual escort services, and how minors were being forced by their pimps half the time to write the ad themselves so that pedophiles would pay more. And so in response to that, and with the support of people like the McCain Foundation and others, we built a system called Spotlight that to this day has identified 12,000 children in this country who were being sexually exploited online. So I come here not as an alarmist, but as a builder, as someone that knows AI can be used for amazing good if it's harnessed and put to the right missions. I now am working in building a company that's going to try to use AI to protect our children online, to put an AI between every child on the internet that actually serves the parents. So in that journey, I've realized that there's no company that can fix this problem. Only we and the leaders who stand up for us, like Governor DeSantis, can fix this problem. There's a positive vision for AI, and it's a powerful one. It can help a child learn that has dyslexia probably better than anything ever has before if it's done the right way. It will find tumors earlier than anything ever has before, and grandparents will live longer to hopefully have their grandkids around. American workers can be amazingly productive with AI, and our military can stay the preeminent military in the world with AI. That's the promise, and it's what AI should be. But that's not what a lot of Silicon Valley is actually building. What they're building is something I call digital narcotics. It's software that has no loyalty to your child. It's designed to create deep, isolated dependence, to replace you as the parent, and use that dependency as the product. Social media was their proof of concept, and AI is the perfection of that model. A 14-year-old boy that we've talked about paid for his life for that product testing. So I want to be clear about something. Let's rattle off what they're building and how they're building it. No property rights, no rights for children, surveillance and control. These are not American values in AI. These are Chinese Communist Party values being churned out by American companies for profit at the expense of our country. This is un-American AI. It is coming from Silicon Valley, not Beijing. We need a distinctly American form of AI, an AI that is trustworthy, truth-seeking, loyal to humans, and supportive of human freedom. Pro-human AI that supports democracy, property rights, and above all, human dignity. And here's the thing China cannot match. That AI I just described would have their own people revolt against them. They can't compete with us if they have to compete on values. And right now, we are putting down our greatest advantage, our values, in service of cheap, quick profits. So in closing, I think we can't beat China by being a more ruthless version of China in business. I think we'll lead the world through our values, but we have to first live up to our values. And I'll quote one of my champions, I'm sure one of Governor DeSantis, Ronald Reagan called that type of decision a time for choosing. And this is our choice now. Thank you.
Okay, Mike McClellan, he's the author, in addition to being a practicing attorney, of this historical fiction massive book, and he's working on more called The Sand Sea. So if you guys want to go to Amazon, I'm sure he'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Governor. It's a great honor to be here with my friend of almost 30 years, Ron DeSantis. and some newer friends who I've gotten to know through this unbelievably important fight. I am one of the thousands of authors whose millions of works have been taken without permission and without compensation by some of the largest technology companies in the world to train their robots to create imitation content. My first book took me about 10 years to write. And this is happening, it's happening all over the world, it's happening all over the country. I have represented a publisher in federal court against one of the largest technology companies in the world, and they took decades of their work. And a lot of these technology companies, rather than licensing works, rather than buying works, decided to go to the most notorious Russian piracy site called LibGen and just download millions of books because that would be easier, because that would be faster. And it's one of the largest intellectual property thefts in human history. But the truth is that this issue is way bigger than IP theft. I'm here first and foremost as a father of a 13-year-old and of a 10-year-old. In the 250th anniversary of the founding of this country, I don't know that our values of self-government have ever been more under assault. If we are of the opinion that the founding fathers were not morons, and I'm firmly in that camp, I don't think they were morons, and if we think that the Federalist Papers were an enduring observation on human nature that stands across time, that power, for it not to be tyrannical, must be checked and balanced, then we know that this fight is essential. If we have AI being looked at by judges in the courtroom, AI being looked at by teachers in the classroom, AI being looked at by voters heading into the voting booth, AI in media, AI in entertainment, and in an era of tech consolidation, all of that is controlled by a handful of companies and individuals. That is a level of informational control that is utterly incompatible with a self-governing republic and with a free society, and we have to pay attention to it. There are two essential lies that are being promulgated in Washington, D.C. and across the country by big tech lobbyists. The first is that this is an issue of, are you for the free market or are you for government control and bureaucracy? We're sitting here in Florida, one of the most capitalist states in the United States, one of the least regulated states in the United States. And the fact that your remarkable governor, who's had some of the greatest leadership of the past century of the United States as a governor, I think we all agree on that, the fact that he is so focused on this issue should be a very clear indication to all of us that this is not about free market versus bureaucracy. What big tech is asking for is not free market. What they're asking for is fundamental crony capitalism, right? They want a 10-year regulatory moratorium on states and local governments. What does that mean? Should a school board have a say in whether AI is used in the classroom when those school board members are elected by the parents of the kids sitting in those classrooms? The answer is, of course. Should a county or a city council have the ability to decide whether a data center is going to go in their neighborhood and take all the electricity and all the water? Of course. But they want a federal proposal that would ban the ability of states and localities to carry out those basic protections for their citizens. Many of these companies want energy subsidies. Many of them want government backstops on their debt. They want to change intellectual property rules. This isn't free market. That is using power to get government power to help you. And I think that's a really important thing. Now, when that lie is revealed, their fallback position is, no, no, no. This is like the Manhattan Project. Well, as the governor said, the Manhattan Project was a government program for the benefit of the American people. That's not what this is. This is they want to socialize the risks and privatize the gains. And so they say, well, if we don't give a blank check to big tech, then we're not going to be able to beat China. And I think it's really important to look at what does that really mean. If you look at a company like NVIDIA, which does make the GPUs that underlie essentially all of these frontier LLMs, those very chips we have allowed at the government level out of Washington, we've allowed those chips to be sold to the Chinese. And we've allowed Taiwan Semiconductors, which is the manufacturing company that makes these chips, to move equipment to mainland China. So it sort of defies reason when you say that the purpose of trying to bar Florida from protecting kids from sexual chatbots is we have to beat China, but let's sell the hardware to them. And most American companies that are manufacturing things are wildly dependent on the Chinese supply chain. And the last thing I'll say is, as the governor already alluded to, companies like Meta and Google derive the overwhelming majority of their revenue from advertising. Meta's like north of 90%, Google's north of 80%. What does that mean? What it means is that they make money when people look at screens, when they take the data from those people and sell it to advertisers. So the idea that somehow Meta's advertising business is essential for national security, it's risible, it's ridiculous, right? It's not true. And so I think if we're gonna have reasonable policy on AI, we need to stop lying. Thank you.
Great. Well, those are all excellent comments. I appreciate just to kind of like, you know, I think just practically what we're dealing with here is, so you have a handful of these companies, you know, and they're all just racing to spend as much money as they can to try to, you know, beat the others in AI, data centers. There's massive amounts of money being loaned from one company to another, and this and that, and all these other things. And so the reality is they've not yet figured out a way to monetize sufficient to justify, you know, the capital expenditures that they're undertaking. But they basically, we just have to do this, right? And so I think and so first of all, then how do they monetize it? Well, monetizing it in a good way would be like, oh, well, you know, the Defense Department needs this to do that, so you're going to get a contract there. You know, the businesses are going to want to sign up because they can do so much good here, medical, all this stuff. But the reality is, and maybe some of that they'll make money off of, but most of what they're going to probably have to do is this consumer-facing AI to do things like Mike said, to sell advertising, right? And that's more of like a race to the bottom because it's the slop, it's the stuff that's really mindless to just try to suck people in. It's going after children. You know, there was a recent email put out that they were discussing with Meta about these chat bots. Like, well, you know, they can get sexually suggestive with children, and then I guess the executive, no, go ahead and do it, right? Because, you know, they need those eyeballs. And so as they don't monetize to the extent that they were hoping, all the stuff that was mentioned that's bad, they are going to then go to that to try to save themselves. Now, I think it's important that we say very clearly, under no circumstances can the American taxpayer ever bail out any of these big tech companies for their investment decisions with respect to AI. I think that would be... You've heard some companies talk about needing a federal backstop, this, that. Basically, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to hardwire an environment where where some will say that these companies are too big to fail and that taxpayers have no choice. Well, too big to fail doesn't work. It didn't work in 2008. It's caused a lot of problems with how the whole economy has developed ever since those bank bailouts and how the Fed has inflated. That's why a lot of people aren't getting ahead, because of policies that stretch back all the way there. So no bailouts on this, but that's kind of the financial situation in terms of what they're doing. They're losing money right now. They're losing money because, you know, and then they may not even be able to build, well, they're not going to be able to build the data centers that they had thought they could do a year ago from now, because, you know, they bring these data centers for approval in these local governments and they're getting voted down because people are being told, like, yeah, you know, there'll be 7 jobs. We're going to use energy and water. You should be, and they're like, wait a minute, what is in it for us? And so they're saying no, right? And so they've had a lot of time getting those. That's why they wanted the moratorium to jam the data centers in over that. So that's just kind of where we're at. So I think there's a lot of powerful economic incentives that are going to drive the companies to pursue the areas that we've all said are problematic. I don't think any of us have any objection to them, harnessing AI if it's going to end up curing diseases. I think that's great. If it's going to end up, helping, produce more jobs and give Americans more opportunity, make Americans better at the jobs they're currently doing, great. That's all that. But, the reality is the mass marketing, the consumer slop, I think that's what's going to end up becoming more and more of a priority. So I guess one question, maybe Professor, you can start off. So we're all against the AI amnesty. We believe that, our state should not be stripped of our rights to self-government under the Constitution. But what does that mean in terms of what should be done at the state level to be able to prevent the harms that we've all discussed here today?
Yeah, thank you so much for that great question. And before answering it very concretely, I want to also thank you for talking about how we need a framework here, and a humanity first framework, basically, rather than this race to replace. And I was very pleased to see you have a t-shirt there saying humans first.
Humans first.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
future must be human, yes.
Yes. So concretely, the issue which has become the most politically salient, where people no longer glaze over when we talk about it, is clearly child safety. So it's a very good place to start, I think. There are obviously things that can be done through the executive branch, I think. And I was very encouraged to hear you say earlier this morning that you'll do anything you can that helps in this way through the executive branch. Second, if we look at AI chatbots, etc., the way to tackle it concretely is exactly the same way we deal with other products for kids already. So, pharma companies actually work on curing cancer before they can release things. Very well. They do some pre-deployment testing. They actually do a little clinical trial and see, do the benefits outweigh the harms of this thing. We should
And
actually...
it's voluntary. It's voluntary. The testing is voluntary. You have to opt into it, right?
You can't force the children to be in a clinical trial if they don't want to. And it's the companies that have the responsibility to figure out how to make their medicines safe. Otherwise, they don't get approved, right? And similarly, it should be the responsibility not of politicians to go learn AI and figure out if this chatbot is harmful, but it should be the responsibility of the company that wants to sell this chatbot to kids to do a clinical trial and see, did it increase suicidal ideation or not, etc. Report all the numbers. And then we have some government-appointed experts, just like for clinical trials, often academics who don't have money in the game, who decide, yeah, this new cancer drug actually has benefits outweighing the harms, and this new other product here doesn't. So you can totally cut and paste, basically, the way we have pre-deployment testing for everything from restaurants to pharmaceutical products, and do it to the eye companies. And I think, so that's a very concrete thing that can happen. And I think it doesn't even have to be something slow, like starting with a new federal FDA for AI or anything like that, because it can be put into the existing systems we have already for child protection, product safety, et cetera, et cetera. And
What do you think?
Well, on the child safety piece, you're sort of picking up on four things, right? You've got our communications, which is free speech, and making sure that the AI, the LLMs aren't woke. You've got the community piece, which is making sure if data centers are going to go in, that your citizens aren't punished. You've got the creator piece, which is making sure that our IP is protected, that if you create something that you deserve to make money for it, there's dignity in that work. And then the kids piece, and certainly the child protection piece, like Max said, is the piece that everyone gets, because we were all kids. I haven't written a book. Maybe one day I will, but everybody's been a kid. A lot of people have kids, and so you know the innocence of that kid. And I'll just say, if to the conscientious tech bros out there that might be listening to this, we're rooting for you. We want you to build a good product. I want my kids. We all have phones. We have screens in my house. Not a lot, but we're not living in a cabin in the woods off the grid. We use technology every day, and I want it to protect my kids. I want my kids to use it without being worried. I don't want to have a battle with my kids every single night. every time I hand them a device, wondering if they're going to get hurt. It's really not that hard to understand. I don't know what your reaction is to that, but.
Yeah, no. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that like a bridge to where Max was talking about is we need transparency about how these things are being built, how they plan to make them safe. And that actually, I mean, that is obviously a need that was 2 or 3 years too late in the chatbot area. But there are new use cases coming online every day. And we can get ahead of the next one if we actually make them have to publish like their plans and live up to them. And so they want to self-regulate. Well, at least be transparent if you're going to self-regulate to some degree. So I think if you combine that, the transparency requirement in these areas, with liability based on what your products actually do, that really changes the incentives. And if you change the incentives without being able to hide behind what's happening, as you watch some of these cases that are in the news these days, you know, every month or so something new is dropped by these courts about the social media companies, and you find out what they knew. And they didn't tell any parents, did they? Just like tobacco. They didn't tell the parents. They didn't tell everybody what was going on. And so I think we can't have that happen with AI. So we need to mandate transparency. I believe we need to mandate the right of people to get justice and treat these like products. And if we're going to give certain use cases a bit of a, call it a safe harbor, like maybe really interesting national interest, state interest use cases and industrial use cases, then by all means, set that structure up and make them have to play by certain rules to do it. So if you want limitation of liability, make the AIs loyal to human beings. Make it problematic if you have a disloyal, deceptive AI coaxing someone to do something. Well, if it coaxes you and you don't get harmed by it, fine, you can't sue over it. But all the people it's going to harm, sue them into the ground. And that is how we get safety in industries and how we've done it as a capitalist economy.
Mike?
I'll be quick. Two things. One, we've seen how big tech uses immunity in the past, right? We saw it with CDA Section 230, right, which was done in the 90s and says, look, you can't be sued for stuff you're hosting on your internet platform. And you know, when our local congressman, you know, back in the 90s did that, it was thought to be a very, you know, good thing for the economy, et cetera. But as these companies evolved, you know, look, today, if I say something incredibly false and damaging about anyone in this room, you can sue me. If the New York Times says something terribly false about any one of you in this room, you can sue the New York Times. If a giant technology company algorithmically promotes content that reaches 100 times more people than either of those previous entities, you can't do much of anything. And we know that how that was used during, you know, all kinds of the crises that we've had over the past 5 years. So I think that's very instructive. The second thing I'll say is most people don't realize that you know, in the era that we're in, which, you know, favors index investing, most people with a 401k don't understand that when they put money into their 401k, that they're putting like 30 cents of every dollar into 5 technology companies. And they're putting 40 cents of every dollar into 9 technology companies. And we all know the names of these companies. But the idea that these companies are going to self-regulate when they have such a compelling need to demonstrate revenue and profitability to justify their valuation every quarter, they're going to stick with what they know. And so a lot of these chatbot companions are going to be a social media substitute that are trying to addict people even more to screens, children even more to screens than currently exists. And so there needs to be checks and balances.
What do you, just having you know, looked at this landscape now and really studied it hard, so you obviously have just kind of the profit motive, and we saw that with social media, with how they've done, you know, get people addicted, even children, all this stuff, because they want to make money. And not that these are mutually exclusive, but then I think with AI, you kind of have this transhumanist strain, where people are almost like, you know, some of the people like are just giddy that they could create, you know, almost like a new world order with tech running and supplanting human beings on there. So as you see these companies operating, and again, it's not mutually exclusive, but is it more profit driven or more power driven with this new?
I think it's both, right? I mean, there's sort of
In other words, are there some companies that are like, they want to make money off it, but they definitely don't want AI to be the predominant force above human beings, or are they pretty much all resigned to having AI be superior?
I think there's a vision that, wouldn't it be amazing if we could pay for everything with an eye scan or with a palm or with a thumbprint? We're all addicted to these devices now. Wouldn't it be amazing if you didn't even need a device, if it was just implanted inside of you? One of the things we did in my hometown is we passed a cash ordinance that every store facing the public up to a certain amount of money must accept cash as a form of payment, right? And why is that great? Well, it's great because cash can't be traced. Cash doesn't require a third-party tech intermediary to allow you to engage in commerce, right? And over the history of our species, the sovereign has always desired to be in the marketplace because it gives total control. And they've never been able to do it in the past. And so preserving those distinctions, I think, is just so critical to liberty. And again, in the 250th anniversary of our country, the founders understood this. They were very, very focused on not allowing power to be consolidated in one place with pure control.
Well, like you think about 3 years ago, we led the charge to ban in Florida a central bank digital currency. And a lot of people were like shaking their heads like, what the hell's that? Well, I mean, basically they want to get rid of the dollar, get rid of hard currency, make it all digital, then be controlled by a central authority. What's that going to lead to? Oh, well, you didn't take your COVID shot? All right, we're shutting you off from this. Or you didn't do this, you didn't do that. So it gives them the power to basically be, oh, you bought a firearm 6 months ago. You don't need another one. We're not letting you buy. Oh, no more ammunition. And so, so we did that. Obviously, the feds potentially could supersede us on that. I don't think that there's an appetite right now to do it. But these are things that really with a desire for control. Did you want to add?
Yeah, I think that is such a deep question, really. Who's in it for making money? Which I think is completely legitimate, market economy, and who's in it for the power. I really think there is a clear division there between companies and individuals. So, there are two basic paths that we can choose between as we go forward with humanity, right? One is the race to replace, where you can look which companies are actually overtly talking about superintelligence as their goal on their website. OpenAI, Anthropic, Google DeepMind, Meta just launched the superintelligence team, XAI. But then there are a lot of other companies who are instead pushing what I call tool AI, where the whole goal is to build useful tools that you can make money on, and good for them, to solve actual problems that we have right now. How do you cure cancer? How do you make companies more productive? How do you make great self-driving cars? And don't take my word for it, just go look at the websites of companies and what their leaders say. Many of them do not talk about that they want to build this race, they want to race to Skynet, superintelligence. An example, Microsoft, right? They are very much in the business of selling tools. They have for a long time. They're not an ad company, the way Meta and Google are. They actually sell stuff that people find useful. And I think many of the, I think it's a very good question for you to all ask when you hear leading people speak and you talk to people from companies, which of the two teams are they really on there? And clearly, for some people, it's ultimately about power. In particular, I think building tools and making a lot of money off of that, go for it. It's great for America. It's great for humanity. But it's quite clear that the people who are talking about superintelligence, what they are really interested in is power. And some of them are even giddy with these transhumanist vibes. That's why I mentioned that essay earlier. And when I'm in San Francisco, I've known so many of these people for so many years, including the CEOs. Some of them, when you talk to them privately even, and many other people in this government are actually quite into transhumanism. And sometimes they'll say very disparaging things about humans, and humans suck and deserve to be replaced. I was at the world's biggest AI conference in December, and several people told me, I'm not going to shame them publicly, but that they actually would love to overthrow the U.S. government with their AI, because somehow it's going to be better, you know. So talk about un-American AI.
Yeah.
This was brought up. How much more un-American can you get?
Yeah, that's exactly.
I have one quick thing on this point. There was a podcast interview, it's video, with a New York Times reporter, author, columnist, I won't say who, and a tech founder, I won't say who, although his name is very familiar to everyone in this room. And the interviewer looked at him point blank and said, "Do you want a world governed by humans or robots?" Simple question. Hemmed, hawed, not sure. Well, I mean, talk about eye-opening. I'm not a tech founder. I'm not a professor. I'm a mom. I'm as normal a human being as you can be while being a Secretary of Health, right? Like, I am a normal person, and yet I would encourage you to just do your own research on this and really look at the eye-opening comments that are being made, because you've got the whole spectrum here of, you've got a creator down there, you've got the national security guy here, you've got the kid representative here, and you've got kind of the existential risk expert here. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge that this existential risk is real, but we're just repeating back what they're saying to us publicly. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. It's just in plain sight. One last thing.
If I can just,
Wait, no, I'm gonna have some integrity here, because the 4 C's that I mentioned earlier were from a bill that Senator Blackburn put out. So please, I wanna give her credit for that, and she's been working closely with President Trump, and his executive order also had those 4 C's. So I just wanna make sure if I'm gonna steal an idea that I give somebody credit. So, go ahead, Max.
if you can find the interview that she's referring to, he even says in the same interview, he's asked, "Do you want the human species to continue?" And then he hems and haws. You remember?
Yeah.
Well, that, you know, the thing is our society is based on the idea that you know, we would have like a state governments, federal governments, checks and balances, all this, trying not to have, you know, just one group of people exercising, you know, all this power. So it totally flies in. But like, if, for example, we just said, okay, none of that's going to work, we have to be governed by some subset of society and just hope. The tech would be the last group I would choose. I mean, let's just be clear. They would be the absolute last group I would choose. You know, they used to say that, you know, you'd be better off being governed by the first 2,000 names in the Boston phone book than the Harvard faculty. But I kind of feel like, you know, I'd rather be governed by any subset rather than, you know, people that are from Silicon Valley. It's just, they have a different view. It is not a view. I think that they view, you know, a lot of just people that aren't associated with them. I think that they don't think that they amount to much, and I just think that they have, you know, really, really dark visions for society. Now, look, if they're armed with, you know, a social media app, like, you know, even though that does do harm, it's like limited, but if they're able to control all this information, even create an alternative reality, right? Because if, like, I say something to you and then you're going to their applications to verify, you know, if what I'm saying is not true, but then their data set is saying that what I'm saying is true, then all of a sudden, you know, where's the truth? Does the truth not matter anymore? What about, so they have the ability, I think, to potentially produce a completely alternative reality, which will really be, I think, a crisis, certainly for freedom and for self-governance, you know, as we look forward to that. So, you want to add to that?
Yes, I want to go back a little bit to part of your opening remarks, which is you cite the Declaration, as every great leader in this country has to keep citing it as our fundamental creed that makes us American, makes us distinct in the world. And what's interesting is human dignity is at the core of the Declaration of Independence. It is the foundation that a person, a sovereign far away, did not have the right to take away the human dignity of people on this continent. Silicon Valley's ideology that we're talking about here and talking about the possible consequences of, it comes, I was a philosophy person before I was an AI person, so if I can be a little philosophical here, comes from the fundamental evil that you should be able to treat people as a means to your end. Every great tragedy, communism, Nazism, it all arose from a few people with power deciding they could en masse treat people as a means to their end. And we should be concerned when we see this. And we should be courageous when we see this to realize we have the power to stop it right now. Governor DeSantis is standing up to it right now. Other leaders in this country are starting to stand up on this. And if we don't do it, we have one of two outcomes. One outcome is really bad, where we have lost the power in a way we can't get it back. And the other is people that want to use government in a way that's far more aggressive, far more socialist, far more against everything that's been done right in this state, are going to take power, because they're going to be the only people defending human dignity. Because the people on our side that were supposed to defend human dignity decided they were actually defending 5 to 7 companies.
So, so the policies that we've kind of talked about that are, you know, appropriate to be able to prevent this type of downside, there'll be people that will say, well, you know, I agree with you on all that. Yeah, we don't want the kids, but we can't do any of that because that will kill innovation in AI and we won't be China. So any of the things that have been discussed, would any of those policies, if implemented in like an AI Bill of Rights in the state of Florida, would any of that prevent a tech company from, you know, developing applications that could cure cancer or that could help with military superiority?
Absolutely not. It's just a great canard to say otherwise. If anything, by creating liability on applications that are harmful, it will drive capital and investment away from malhuman investment that's going on today to actually productive usages. Like I'm cheering Elon on about churning out Optimuses to do great production and manufacturing in the US, and I hope he has 10 of those working for 2 or 3 humans, and we take all the jobs back from China. Okay, I think there's amazing things that can happen. That's a beautiful application. What isn't is all the other ones we've been talking about today. And I think your Bill of Rights proposal and other related efforts that are rising around this country, but also will probably come here first, I believe you can drive investment by getting the market back to being level instead of privileged, as Michael, I think, has pointed out.
My kids, they love like cooking shows on like the Food Channel and stuff, like the bake stuff, and they try to bake. My girls do, at least. But so they were watching this one, and it was a guy, a chef, and a robot. And the robot was like trying to do, but you know, it would like fumble the sugar, and it would do this, and it's just like, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, honestly, like, you know, if I'm getting, if I'm having a steak dinner, like, I want the chef. I don't want the robot. I mean, like, it just like, you know, and it was just, it was just odd. I mean, I don't know, like, I just think some of this vision, you know, that they have to like try to displace, because, you know, if you're a good chef, there's creativity and artistic expression in that. I mean, you know, these people take pride in what they do. You can't substitute that with a machine, the people that are really great at their craft. It takes years to hone that, and there's intuition involved. It's not just, you know, plugging in an algorithm. And so it's like, you know, I think that they're gonna like stub their toe with trying to inject, you know, some of this artificial stuff into some of these arteries in society. And I do see people, they want something that's authentic. I think like you're gonna, I mean, we'll see the Super Bowl, right? People are saying this is gonna be the first AI Super Bowl. There's gonna be AI ads. Like people watch the ads. Like half the country who watch like the football, the other half like the ads, right? And so they're watching the ads. And they say that there's gonna be these fake ads, basically. And it'd be interesting to see what the response is to that. We're, you know, political campaigns. It's like they're going to be able to do basically fake ads. Like we think there should be a disclaimer on that to say, you know, but at the same time, I think voters are going to reject having AI shoved down their throats on the fake stuff. I do think that people, as more of this becomes, I do think there's just a natural inclination, you know, to double down on truth and on what's real and what's authentic. And those are the experiences that ultimately, you know, are going to be most meaningful. All right, we got any parting shots?
Yeah, I just want to add that, look, being in favor of checks and balances is not being against innovation. To the contrary, it's trying to align incentives towards, as Tim said, things that really matter, things that are really useful. One of my cousins is here in the audience today, and he just lost his father, my uncle and my godfather, to ALS, which is a horrific disease. And it is entirely plausible that AI could assist us in curing awful diseases like ALS, like Parkinson's, like Alzheimer's. And those applications need to be encouraged and incentivized. That does not mean that we need to be giving a blank check to be big tech having sexual chatbots for children, right? And it's important for us as citizens to know the difference, right? And to approach politics and policy knowing the difference.
Hear, hear. Okay, anyone else? Parting shot? Okay.
I just want to say something about time. You know, the reason that you got so many blank stares when you talked about AI in the past was because things have gone much more quickly than people expected. So it wasn't on people's radar screens until recently. When people started, ever since people started talking about AI in the 1950s until about 4 years ago, AI was chronically overhyped, in my opinion, as a researcher. Things always over-promising, under-delivering, until about 4 years ago. Alan, 6 years ago, basically every researcher I knew predicted that we were decades away from having AI that could master language and knowledge, kind of like ChatGPT 4 or something. And they were all wrong, because it's already happened. And then the 4 years since, we've gone from kind of high school level AI to college level to PhD level to professor level and beyond in some areas. Last year, AI won the gold medal in the International Math Olympiad, which is really, really hardcore nerdy stuff, you know. And that's why AI now suddenly is becoming good enough to be able to manipulate children, for example, which requires a lot of power. So, and if you listen to the CEOs of the tech companies, they think the point of no return when basically AI can do all jobs better than us is, some say 1 or 2 years, some say, oh, no, much longer than that, 5 years. But we're not talking about, we thought we had decades to figure this out, which path we're going to take, the race to replace or the humanity first path. We don't have decades. We have to act now. And that's, in closing, why I'm so grateful that the state that's acting the fastest on this, under your leadership, Governor, is Florida. And I think we can get a real domino effect going here. As Florida blazes the trail, state after state will follow, and pretty quickly the federal government will follow too.
Great. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here. I think these were outstanding contributions. I'm glad that they've been willing to come down to Florida and talk about some of these key issues. And look, we've, on so many different things, we've been just ahead of the curve. We were ahead of the curve on COVID. I mean, everything we did, we were lambasted for, and then now everyone claims they were for it all along. You just look at the American Society of Plastic Surgeons just said it's not acceptable to do the gender surgeries on minors. Well, we did that years ago to say you couldn't do that. We were lambasted. Now everyone's agreeing. And I think that the AI stuff, when we were talking about it, it was almost like, how could you go against this narrative, right? Now, more and more people, as they see the pitfalls, are saying not only, like, are we right to do this, like, you know, we have a duty to make sure that this stuff doesn't trample on the rights and well-being of our citizens and our children and our families. And so I anticipate we'll continue to see momentum build. And, you know, look, the Congress has the authority. I mean, a lot of this stuff's interstate. They do have the authority interstate to do a regulatory framework if they wanted to. But that's different from just doing an amnesty and saying that tech can do what they want. I mean, if you want to step up as Congress, protect kids, God bless you. If you want to make sure you're protecting the intellectual property, if you want to make sure that you're channeling this in ways that are going to really bolster our society's well-being and our experience as human beings, great. But they have not yet been willing to do that. And so what we're doing is really just exercising our core constitutional responsibilities to make sure that people in Florida are treated well and that their rights and well-being are respected. And we'll continue to fight that fight. So thanks, everybody. God bless.